Welcome in, everybody. Welcome back to the Let's Talk Live podcast. It is August 16th, 2023. This is episode 55, and I want to welcome everybody in to the live show. I hope everybody enjoyed that mini episode of Gilgo Beach. Those mini episodes have been a passion of mine, and they are a lot of work to do. I have very limited editing software, so I'm doing this with like 3 or 4 editing programs to try to get these videos together, but I am guarantee that I will be producing more of them down the road. They have become a passion and a love for mine, and I'm hoping that I can get some 20 to 30-minute videos someday. So we will keep practicing that craft and working on those videos. Hopefully get some lift out there. It'd be really nice to get that in the algorithm. All right, we're going to talk Rex Heuermann tonight, obviously Long Island serial killer, to kind of follow up with my third mini episode. I want to welcome everybody into the live chat. As you just saw, I had a silent protest that I want to make sure that everybody is aware of what is going on with our country and over in Maui at this specific time. I'm very disappointed, and some people may not agree with me, but this is my platform, and I disagree at what's going on in this leadership in this country right now. But I digress. Let's move on to Long Island serial killer. Before I get into that, let's do some quick check here in the chat. The chat shall fill in as we go on. Cindy's here. Candy's here. Nice to see you. Yes, we had to click over. Lakota is here. I have Mind Your Business is here as well. Hurst Hill is here as well. Nice to see you. Diana is here. Amy is here. And we have Miller Time 66 in the chat as well. Tsunami's checking in. Salsa Sam is here as well. And if I miss Danielle, Danielle is here as well. Okay, let's get into Long Island serial killer. Let's do some headlines first, and then I have some videos that we can follow up in these headlines. So News 12, the Bronx reports a reevaluation of a 20-year-old cold case murder in Las Vegas for potential connections to suspect Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann. The victim, Jody Marie Brewer, disappeared from Las Vegas on August 14, 2023, when she was 19 years old. Her torso was found wrapped in cloth and plastic 2 weeks later in the Mojave Desert. Rex Heuermann was the suspected Gilgo Beach serial killer, owns a timeshare near the Las Vegas Strip. Jody's mother, Pam Brewer, suggests that Heuermann's timeshare location in an area known for prostitution could have made it easy for him to target his victims, similar to the circumstances of Gilgo victims. Jody Brewer has also turned to prostitution due to negative influences and drug use. The article from 12 News The Bronx reveals that a review of 266 cold case murders in Las Vegas by the Turn to Terror team identified 4 other sex workers who died under suspicious circumstances between 2003 and 2006. Law enforcement source from Las Vegas believes that one person may be responsible for several of these cases. However, DNA evidence could take months due to its degradation over time. Pam Brewer expresses hope that the connection to Rex Heuermann's case could provide resolution for her daughter's case. Jody's sister, Jacqueline Brewster, shares this sentiment, hoping for answers to a long-standing mystery. All right. I have another headline here from the New York Post. The New York Post reports the disturbing behavior exhibits by suspect Gilgo Beach murderer Rex Heuermann before his arrest and the ongoing investigation into the case. Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison revealed that Heuermann was engaged in unsettling activities, including questionable internet searches and other actions. While Harrison did not explicitly state that Heuermann was preparing to kill again, he emphasized the need to understand his lifestyle, which prompted intense surveillance leading up to the arrest. Harrison defended his strong language used to describe Heuermann as a demon that walks among us and a predator, referring to the impact Heuermann had on multiple families and lives. He stated his confidence that Heuermann is the subject of the investigation, yet acknowledged that more work needs to be done to identify other potential subjects, related to other bodies discovered in the area. Heuermann is charged with multiple first and second-degree murder charges connected to the strangulation deaths of several women, including Melissa Bartholomew, Amber Lynn Castillo, Megan Waterman, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes. The remains of these women were found near Gilgo Beach in 2010. Despite this, police cannot definitively rule out the presence of another serial killer on Long Island. The Post reports also touches on the death of Shannon Gilbert, whose disappearance led to discovery of the Gilgo Beach victims. While the official cause of her death remains undetermined, there is debate over whether she died from strangulation, as suggested by the second examination conducted at the request of her estate's lawyer. Harrison, who initiated Gilgo Beach Task Force in 2021, elaborated on the investigation progress and involvement in various agencies, including the FBI. DNA evidence collected from pizza crust and a napkin played a crucial role in linking Heuermann to one of the victims, Megan Waterman, and led to his arrest. The investigation continues with a daily task force meeting to discuss the case. Heuermann's ongoing behavior, firearms found at the home, his connection to the victims, and his entanglement with sex workers and CP after the alleged murders are all under scrutiny. A judge also ordered Heuermann to provide a DNA sample for further testing in the investigation. So like I said, I've been reporting on this. I've been talking about this, and I truly believe that if this case expands across New York, Las Vegas, South Carolina, New Jersey, and they find victims that are connected to Heuermann, and he is charged and found guilty in that, he will be one of the most prolific serial killers of all time, in my opinion. Let's see here. I want to go back up here. Rising Hello. I urge you, before we go on, I urge you to go watch Gilgo Beach all the way to the end. Okay, let's move on here. I have a couple of videos we're going to play up and play through. The first one I want to go through is Gilgo Beach murders. Former detective Joseph Jackalone says the woods in and around Rex Heuermann's home should be searched. Let's play this out.
Suffolk County Sheriff's Office says accused Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann has been taken off suicide watch. He's been in jail since mid-July on murder charges. Several of his victims were found in a remote marsh off Ocean Parkway. And now a former NYPD cold case detective is urging police to keep looking and expand their search to the secluded woods near Heuermann's home. Joseph Jackalone joins us now. He is the author of the Cold Case Handbook and a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You know, most of your career was dedicated to major criminal investigations. And as you watch investigators dig out of evidence from inside Heuermann's home, you've actually got your eyes on this 430-acre preserve just a half mile from his house. What do you think police could find there?
Well, we'll never know unless we look, right? So we know that they uncovered Gilgo way back when, 13 years ago now. And the place got, for lack of a better term, it gets hot, right? So there's a lot of police activity, and anybody who would be dumping bodies there would stop dumping it and look for another location. So now that we have identified a possible suspect, you look only a few blocks away and you have this 432 or so acres of property, what we refer to as the Massapequa Preserve. Is there something to look at? And that preserve is also attached to Bethpage State Park, right? So there's a long bike trail. I mean, we're talking about nearly 2,000 acres worth of property.
Yeah, how would you go through a task that large? You know, it's obviously a lot of ground to cover. What would be the best way, do you think, to get through that area and check it all out for potential bodies?
Well, the best way to do that is you break it up into zones, right, or quadrants. So that's what a crime scene unit would do. You'd break it up into bite-sized pieces, and you would bring in your cadaver dogs. Even if you could use it as a training session for cadaver dogs and the investigators that are with the dogs, just like they, uncovered some of the Gilgo victims just by chance from doing this training exercise. It might be a good opportunity to do so. I'm not saying that there's anything there, but I think it would just be a good idea or be prudent for them to look.
Yeah.
Right.
Getting into the mind of a serial killer, which, you've done, you've written about this handbook of cold cases. You say that you have doubts that Heuermann stopped killing after 2011. You talk about this cool-off period. Can you go into that?
Well, just from what we've known from research of serial killers, that they will take some time off per se, and be, especially if something gets really hot, like the police department did in Gilgo investigation, and all the talk and the media and everything else goes like that, you're going to run away from that area. So if you're not going to, unfortunately, these guys just don't stop, right? They'll take a time off and they'll look for something else or a different location. We know that he's pretty much a homebody within that area. Yes, he's done some traveling to some locations, and that warrants a check, but that's not part of what the Suffolk Police Department needs to worry about, right? That's what you have those other agencies to look at. Take a look at home, around that surrounding area. I mean, it's just an ideal place to look at in regards to what somebody could possibly do.
And what do you think about the other victims? Because right now he's charged with 3 deaths, but there's more than 10 victims. What do you think? Is there another serial killer in that area? Is that a possibility?
Well, listen, you never say never, never say always. But from the beginning, I was always a firm believer in as one serial killer who adapted over time based on technology, right? So we saw, dismembered victims in the beginning because he picked these girls up off the street. He might have been afraid that somebody saw them get into his car. And so he was trying to make sure that the police didn't identify him. And then as technology came along, he was able to use burner phones and the internet. It was more anonymous. He didn't have to really worry about that. So, only time will tell. There's going to be a long, hard investigation. I have all the faith in the world in Rodney Harrison and the rest of it.
I clicked off on that early. Sorry about that. So we're going to go to Banfield. Victim's attorney, Rex Heuermann's wife, said should be a suspect. Should be a suspect. All right, let's play this out.
I want to bring in now John Ray. He is an attorney who represents the families of Gilgo Beach victims, Jessica Taylor and Shannon Gilbert. John, thank you also for joining us again tonight. We always appreciate your perspective.
I believe this is the attorney that got the strange phone calls, which he thought was Heuermann, and said that he was being watched, and essentially said where his daughter was and knew everything about. And he said, I think there was to the effect of like, enjoy that pizza. And then all of a sudden, like 8 pizzas were delivered to his front door. Really, really crazy stuff.
What did you make of the presser? I mean, I know you were there. You spoke afterwards after their lawyers sort of left. What did you make of the whole thing?
Well, what I make of it is very simple. And that is that this lady is conning everybody. And she's been doing that for years. She's managed to, for example, go on food stamps when her husband made the kind of money he made. They own numerous properties all over in several states. These are not poor people, and they've managed to raise at the last count today, $44,000 in GoFundMe, and they're not victims. This is all a big put on, and what makes it worse is that it is overwhelmingly likely that this woman, Miss Ellerup, and her, the other adults, certainly Miss Ellerup, knew very well what was going on in that house with Mr. Heuermann downstairs in the basement with sex workers. And he had numerous
how can you say that, though? I mean, John, that's a really big allegation to make. I mean, the police have said that they didn't know anything, and we've seen in other cases with serial killers that the families don't know anything. These guys are sickos and masterminds and psychotic, and they can compartmentalize. I mean, how can you go on national TV and say that you know that they knew something?
I can say that for several reasons. First of all, she lived in that little tiny house, and according to her own lawyers, there's no soundproof room downstairs. It would be virtually impossible in this day and age where they've
Yeah,
together for 27 years
like
in that little tiny house, that she had no knowledge with cell phones and the internet. She had no knowledge whatsoever of what he was up to all those years downstairs. That's the first problem we have with this. The second problem is the way she's behaved is completely antithetical to what a person would do under similar circumstances if they were not involved. You know, she not one of those people, her or her children, have said anything by way of sympathy for any of the victims of the serial killer, no matter what. They've just completely ignored that. They sit on the front porch, they laugh, they give the European middle finger to the press.
Well, listen, I mean, all the pictures I've seen them looking very sad outside, and maybe they're just, I mean, could they still just be in denial and shock and hoping that it's not true? And then the thing you said about her not knowing if he had escorts over there. I mean, people just have weird marriages. Maybe they had some kind of weird arrangement where he was allowed to have the escorts downstairs, having sex with the escorts downstairs. But that doesn't mean that she knew that he was a killer.
That doesn't mean she didn't, and she should be a suspect when 2 of her hairs are found on the tape wrapping up 2 of the victims. She's at least a suspect. But there's also another factor, which I had the good fortune to come across, and that is a witness. And there is a witness who is very credible. I know I pull rank by saying that because I'm 41 years in the business, and I've done many cross examinations and 33 different homicides I've been involved in one way or another. So I bring that to the table. I've examined credible, and in detail she is credible. And
I got a phone call.
She's not coming forward with her name at this point, and I'm going to respect that.
So
that's my job.
What is the witness? What did the witness tell you though? Like, tell us about this witness.
What I hear unquestionably is that Rex Heuermann was bringing sex workers frequently into his home over the years, spent a small fortune on him, and that the wife was clearly very aware of this and even indicated it actively at some point. So I have that plus all these inferences that you can draw from the way this woman has behaved in this whole thing. And when you put the two together, it's pretty hard to deny that she should be a suspect. Perhaps the police did not consider her a suspect initially because she seemed to have alibis for when 3 of those women disappeared. But those alibis are fungible, like anything else. And if she was away in Iceland on a trip and so on, do we know when these girls were actually killed, the day they were killed? Do we know how long they were kept before they were buried? Do we know whether they were still alive and then were killed later on? You don't know any of those things. So you really need to be suspicious. And that's what I'm saying is you need to be suspicious.
I understand what you're saying, being suspicious and keeping an open mind. And I'm sure hopefully the police are with everything involving this case. It just seems like we don't really have the evidence right now to call out the family like that.
Thank you for watching. Go to
Usually pretty good at getting that done. Wow. Oh, do you all think that she knew? Look at the top. I got a poll up there right now. Look at the poll. We got 46% of you said yes, 54% said no. So it's 50-50 now. Wow. 50-50 on the poll. Jeez. Oh, we just went up. We went back to 50-50. I love it. All right. Let's go to Lauren Crime Network. Family of Rex Heuermann threatens a lawsuit. Let's see here. All right. Let's play this out from Law and Crime Network.
Welcome back, everybody. The family of Rex Heuermann
Jesse
held a
Weber.
press conference Friday, expressing their shock and trying to process their new reality that the lifelong family man that they knew is suspected of being a serial killer. The life of Manhattan architect Rex Heuermann has been turned upside down since he was arrested and charged with the murders of 3 women. He's also suspected in a 4th. All 4 women were found wrapped in burlap on Long Island's Gilgo Beach, right across the bay from the suspect's home. But it was DNA evidence that pointed investigators in Heuermann's direction. As the quest for evidence continues, a seemingly well put together family is falling apart. Prosecutors revealed that the suspect lived a double life, using burner phones and email accounts to meet escorts and search for child pornography, all while living under the same roof as his wife, daughter, and stepson. Heuermann's estranged wife, Asa Ellerup, has since filed for divorce and has publicly denied any involvement in her husband's alleged crimes. Attorneys for Ellerup and the rest of her family shared more details at Friday's press conference. Ellerup has cancer, and her attorney said she will soon run out of money to cover her treatments. The family's home also remains severely damaged from the recent raid by investigators. An attorney for Heuermann's children announced the family's next steps.
This case is going to be a very long time in the making. And through that process, obviously, we've talked about in the past few days that the law requires them, in order to preserve those legal rights and remedies, to file certain legal documents at certain intervals. If they don't do that, they will have waived those rights in the public forum. So we are, at this point, announcing that the children and Ms. Ellerup, on her behalf, are going to be protecting those legal rights and remedies by filing what's called a notice of claim. That notice of claim is going to be filed within the next 30 days, and that obviously is a legal prerequisite to filing a lawsuit, and it has to be done because otherwise those rights are waived. And that's what's going to happen. When it happens, obviously, we'll let you all know. We'll let you folks know what the content of it is, but that's the announcement that we have to make. In closing, I'd like to echo my colleagues' statements. At this time, the family, again, requests truly and honestly that their rights and liberties have to be protected. And a part of that, again, is that the focus is on their basic needs, their food, their water, their shelter, their clothing, okay? And that's
100%
the paramount concern right now. It is those basic human needs that all of us have that have been ripped apart from them. So we ask you again, please respect their privacy. Please know that they're going through a horrific emotional time that none of us could imagine, and let the legal process run its course.
Okay, there's a few things I want to break down here. First, is it normal for a home or a property to be destroyed during a raid? Because he's innocent right now. He's innocent until proven guilty.
I mean, it's not just him. His family is far more innocent than he is. They have no allegations. Yes, unfortunately, this is a common occurrence and a common conversation I have with parents and landlords who have people who have their tenants searched, where their home, property, and even vehicles can be destroyed. And the thing that most disturbing to me is vehicles. When they search a vehicle, like, for example, pull open a panel of a door to search to see if there's drugs inside, they just need to make sure the car is operable when it's given back. The panel of a door is not a part of the operation of the car. So people are left with parts of the car missing or left open, and like, you got to figure it out.
And does the city ever pay for it? I mean, I know she said that her attorney said they're going to file a notice of claim in anticipation of a lawsuit. Do they ever get any money back for this?
So that really depends on what county and what state you're in. Sometimes if you ask, they'll pay. But if you want to force them to do so, it is very difficult. There's usually 2 different avenues, and both of them often lead in a dead end. Some people go under the 5th Amendment and the taking clause, and they say, hey, you took something, you damaged my property, and you didn't give me fair compensation. Well, the state or the city will come back around and say, well, it's not for public use. And when people bring
what does
that
that mean?
Well, in the taking clause, if the state or the government takes something for you for public use, they're supposed to give you fair compensation.
Couldn't they say they're doing a public benefit by getting a doing a public investigation?
And that's what I say as well. The public benefit is that you're taking this criminal off the streets. But no, the courts still get them around that. Oftentimes the courts say, this is a tort that you want to file against the city. But if you file a tort against the city, you have to show that that search warrant was unreasonable. Show me how you're going to show that this search warrant was unreasonable. We were talking about the Gilgo Beach murders, and you're trying to get a connection between 3 women that were dead and the man in that house. Very difficult.
And real quick, this notice of claim, what is it? How does it work? Is it going to be successful at all?
Oh, notice of claim is just letting the state comptroller or whoever it may be based in your county know within 90 days, if it's here in New York, which it is, that we are going to sue you and we're going to ask for this. It's just you can't sue the state or the county or the city without letting them know first.
Well, my heart goes out to the family. And I didn't know that she was sick. That's equally as difficult to think about. So I'm glad she has legal representation, because this is a serious issue, and I'm curious to see what might be the end result, if she'll get any money back or any compensation based on what happened. All right, when we come back, an Iowa sex offender stands trial in the murder of a young girl. Family ties between the victim and defendant, and what a police sergeant revealed on the stand.
I'm going to speed up here.
He's the man accused of kidnapping. Fisherman
That might be it.
Shirt with blood. There was an axe with.
Okay, that's it in that video. Let's go full screen again here. Yeah, his property was a super mess. I want to see midget wrestling. All right, let's go to Law and Crime Network. Again, police are using genetic genealogy to solve the serial killer's case. Let's play it out. Law and Crime Network.
We were able to identify Fire Island Jane Doe as Karen Vergata, who was 34 years old.
For 27 years, Karen Vergata was known as Jane Doe number 7 or Fire Island Jane Doe. We talk with one of the scientists who helped identify her once and for all. Welcome to Sidebar here on Law and Crime. I'm Anjanette Levy. No one knew Karen Vergata's name, only that part of her skull had been found on Gilgo Beach, her legs found on Fire Island years prior. But recently, officials in Suffolk County on Long Island sent DNA from the remains to Othram Labs in Texas. Othram works with law enforcement officials to identify remains and help solve cold cases. Othram used genetic genealogy to identify Karen Vergata. Suffolk County officials haven't said whether they believe Vergata's murder is connected to the Gilgo Four. Rex Heuermann is a 55-year-old architect from Massapequa Park. He faces charges in the murders of 3 of the Gilgo Four. He's pleaded not guilty to the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Amber Costello, and Megan Waterman. The DA says he is the prime suspect in the murders of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Heuermann insists through his attorney that he didn't do this and that he's innocent. Joining me to discuss the technology used to identify Karen Vergata, the Fire Island Jane Doe, is Kristen Middleman. She's the Chief Development Officer with Othram Labs. Othram helped identify the Fire Island Jane Doe and has worked on other cases across the country. We've featured them in other cases before as well. Kristen, thanks for coming on to Sidebar. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I want to start at the beginning with this because this testing is different from your typical DNA testing. Of course, you have to have a DNA profile to do what you do, but you guys use a different type of profile to do the investigative genetic genealogy. It's called a SNP, if I am saying that right. So tell us how you really start at the beginning and go about building these family trees and everything like that off of a DNA profile, an STR profile that you later, I guess, I don't know, develop another type of profile for.
Absolutely. So standard forensic testing that's been used for 30 years, DNA testing that has gone to court all this time, is known as STR testing. There you're looking at 20 STR markers and you're comparing them to the known database of perpetrators that is owned by the FBI, CODIS. So sometimes you got
the thing that I love about doing these other cases is you find out interesting things about things that are being, detective work or processes that are being used in Idaho, and you can get a deep dive into this type of content or the type of these procedures if you're studying other cases. And this is really interesting because we know that there is a lot of DNA evidence or some DNA evidence in Idaho 4. So it's really interesting to see, how this all plays out when you hear these experts talk about it.
You guys may have heard that as CODIS testing. If someone is in the known perpetrator database, then you have a direct hit. But your DNA would have to be in there, or maybe the DNA of your child, like a direct familiar relationship. What we do is we build profiles that have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of markers, up to 1 million markers. So these profiles have all of these SNP markers that you just discussed. And when you upload those to genealogical databases consented for law enforcement use, you're able to get really distant relationships. The more markers you have, the more distant relationships you can actually reach. And so you can get a sixth cousin, a fifth cousin, a fourth cousin, and all of us are related to some degree. Most areas in the United States, they were founded from a few key families. And so to some degree, there'll be some relative in there. And they're not the relatives that come home for Thanksgiving with you, not the relatives that you know or you would call, but there would be some match in these databases. Then our genealogists go in, our genealogy team, just like you said, and they look at these matches and they figure out who the most recent common ancestor is on a tree. And then they build the tree back down until the puzzle piece that the person that we're trying to identify fits right into a family tree. At that point, we return that lead back to investigators and they contextualize it within their investigation.
So let's talk about Karen Vergata because we know that part of her remains, so gruesome and grisly, it's sad. Her legs and feet were located in one area in a plastic bag on Fire Island, but then her skull was located much later than that. So you may have had a better DNA sample to work with from the remains from the legs, but maybe not the skull so much. So tell us where you began with that. Obviously, you took her DNA and did your work.
Yes, we took the remains and we extracted DNA, and then we proceeded to do forensic grade genome sequencing. That's this technique where we do a feasibility analysis before we consume the DNA, because sometimes when you're dealing with perpetrator cases, you only have a finite amount of DNA in the tube. And if you consume it, all DNA testing, all DNA sequencing is a destructive process. You're actually consuming someone's last chance of getting justice. And so we do this feasibility analysis that allows us to, in advance, predict whether or not we can build one of these profiles with the properties of the DNA found in that sample. Because we've identified and returned leads on over 1,000 cases, and because we've done it all in house, this has become a truth set. Each case becomes a standard. So we compared the DNA from her case to the previous DNA samples that we have run here at Othram that we know we can successfully build a profile from, and proceeded once we knew that, yes, we could build one of these profiles. Then we did the sequencing, built a profile that had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of markers, and that was uploaded to genealogical databases consented for law enforcement use. And in this case, we worked with the New York office from the FBI, and they actually did the genealogical research to put her back on a family tree.
Okay,
Once they
so
identified her,
go ahead.
they actually called the family and asked if there's someone missing. That's what happens each time.
Wow.
And her father did say that she was missing. They were looking for her. And the last time he had spoken to her was Valentine's Day in 1996.
So I assume then you requested, or the FBI requested, a standard, a sample from her father.
That's right. And then there's a confirmation test that confirms our hypothesis that it was her. And so that's what happens each time, whether it's, and if a direct relationship isn't available, we can do a kin-snip confirmation, which allows you to use a further out relative. But in this case, her father was still alive. In fact, he passed away a few months after finding out what happened to his
Yeah.
daughter.
The advancements.
Oh my goodness. So did he feel some sense of peace, or are you able to
Tsunami.
describe to us or for us how he felt, or his reaction upon learning once and for all where his daughter was located?
Yeah, so what has been reported is that he had been looking for her continuously. It was his only child, and he had hired a private investigator to find her through the years. And maybe he was holding on because after he found out what had happened to her, he was able to pass away, at least knowing the truth. I've met hundreds of families over the last few years doing this job that are missing someone. And I have to say, their life stops the moment when their loved one is gone, or at the moment where they don't know what happened to them.
I've talked about this a million times, just even in in Idaho, when you lose someone like that, your life stops. Steve and Christy's life has stopped to the extent that it was before, and she's so right on this.
Their loved one or who is responsible. I've met families that live in the same home for 47, 50 years, hoping someone will come back and knock on the door or someone will know where their loved one is. Families that go back to their favorite place weekly, trying to see if maybe they would run into them. Families that go back to the crime scene, hoping they run into the perpetrator. They hire investigators. They get online every day looking for their loved one, and they can't move forward until they know the truth.
As far as Karen goes, uh, did you do any work to see, at least on her legs, or had anybody else done any work on her legs to see if there was other DNA, maybe a swab to see if a perpetrator's DNA could have been on her body parts?
I'm sure. Every time unidentified remains are found, and this is a case, I'm sure that there was work done to see what other DNA was found there as well. But until any of that is announced, until that becomes relevant to an investigation, um, and announced by law enforcement, again, these remains were found decades ago. Othram didn't exist until
Yeah.
2018.
Her remains were obviously preserved enough. The legs were preserved enough to extract the DNA profile. Was it particularly difficult to work with those remains because of the age of them? Even though, they seemed like they were found relatively quickly. In April, she vanishes on February 14th. Was that difficult?
There was contamination that was involved in this case that made it difficult to sequence the correct DNA profile in order to be able to get her identity. But the age of the remains, like I said, we've worked cases that are over 100 years old, so that wasn't
Wow.
the biggest issue here. It was contamination from the surroundings that made this case a little bit more difficult to work with. But it's something that we've done time and time again here at Othram, and what used to be impossible is no longer the exception, it's the rule. It's something that's easy and it works as you go through this process relatively quickly because of those standards that have been built. And so that brings me hope that everyone that's out there nameless right now, every victim that's out there that has DNA, they should have their name back. I think within the next few years, we're going to live in a world where no one goes nameless for decades. No father, no parent is waiting to find out where their loved one is. No one's wondering if their loved one just ran away and doesn't want to be part of their life anymore, if something happened to them. That's that shouldn't happen anymore. This new type of sequencing, um, it is being used now in contemporary investigations. Right after standard DNA sequencing doesn't give you that identity, and with victims, it almost never does because they're not in the known perpetrator database. So you are not getting that answer. It can easily be flipped to forensic grade genome sequencing, and you can infer someone's identity and not have a cold case. Be able to identify that person and give them their name back right away and start the investigation as to what happened to them much sooner, which often leads to being able to get more clues and solve the case faster.
I just wanted to go back to Karen just briefly. You said that her father had disclosed that the last time he had spoken with her was on Valentine's Day. Did he ever recall that you're aware of, whether or not, like, what that conversation entailed? I mean, was he aware that she was engaged in this type of work and in being an escort?
He did. In the interview that I read, he said that she had called him from jail and she was very distressed on that last phone call, and so he knew that she was in trouble and had been trying to piece what happened to her afterwards. And he said that she kept in touch. They had a close relationship and she contacted him frequently. So when she stopped contacting him, that was something that was unusual. And he didn't feel was something that was because she didn't want to contact him.
Well, Kristen, it's been wonderful talking with you. I've loved this, and I hope you'll come back sometime so we can talk more about one of your other cases. So thank you so much for joining us to
Absolutely.
talk to us about Fire Island Jane Doe.
Thank you for having me. And anytime you have DNA questions, call us back. Thank you.
All right. All right, let's go to the final video from Law and Crime Network. The sex worker tells all. She says she was terrified when she dated Rex Heuermann. Let's hear from her. She's definitely doing the rounds right now on all the talk shows.
He's the only date I ever went on where I was scared, so I never forgot it.
A former escort says she went on a date with the man accused of being the Gilgo Beach serial.
I'm going to be honest with y'all. That Gilgo Beach video that I put together is not performing well. I'm a little disappointed. So I'm probably going to relaunch it on Sunday at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I think I'm going to make it members only right now. And then I'm going to relaunch it on Sunday. I just think that like this time of night, there's so many fucking streams going on that everybody's like all over the place. And I really want that video to get some activity on it. So I'm probably going to relaunch it this Sunday, but at least anyway, most of my members over and checked it out. And it's just not performing. So all right, let's play this.
Serial killer and lived to tell the tale. Now, Nikki Brass is here to tell her story and why she believes she made it home that night.
Introducing the next generation of pepper spray. Meet Pong, a new maximum strength self-defense product with a patented modular design, revolutionizing the self-defense.
How dangerous it can be to work as an escort. Nikki Brass worked as an escort several years ago, and in the time she worked as an escort, she said there was only one date that scared her. She says that date was with Rex Heuermann, the man accused of murdering 3 women who worked as escorts. Heuermann remains behind bars in the Suffolk County Jail, where he's being held without bond. He's accused of murdering 3 petite escorts, Melissa Barthélemy, Amber Costello, and Megan Waterman. The district attorney says Heuermann is the prime suspect in the murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Heuermann has said through his attorney that he is innocent, but the DA says DNA and cell phone records connects him to the victims and the crimes. Joining me to discuss Rex Heuermann is someone who actually went on a date with him. She is Nikki Brass. She is a hairstylist and a makeup artist and a former escort. Nikki, welcome to Sidebar. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Nikki, when did you first realize that Rex
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Heuermann was somebody that you had encountered some time ago?
So he's the
God.
only date I ever went on where I was scared, so I never forgot it.
Holy
And for the last 10 years, I've told dozens of people that I swear I sat down and had dinner with the Gilgo Beach killer.
Yeah.
And people thought I was crazy. And once he was arrested, my friend recognized his picture because I showed it to her before the date and said, you know, he's an architect in Manhattan. And she remembered it and she was like, oh my God, it was him. And I knew it was him. I knew it was him.
Was this soon after he was arrested, like right afterwards?
So he got arrested. I have
Yeah.
you know, kids. So
Like a
I watch
Kardashian.
more kid shows than I get to the news these days. But once the story broke, I had texted her and I
God,
said,
what is
hey,
she on?
you should go check out the news.
Hey.
The Gilgo Beach killer was arrested.
hanging
Go
out.
look at him. And she went and turned it on. And right away she was like, oh my God, it's him.
How did this date get arranged? Was it on Backpage? Was it on Craigslist?
So I mean, I had back pages, Seeking, Sugar Daddies. I had so many different pages with ads with a Google generated number that you could contact me on. So I'm not sure which one he contacted me through. I tried reaching out to one of the sites and actually asking
Yeah,
if they could
downers
pull the
going.
messages between us on that now deleted account, you know?
She does sound like Anna
And
Nicole Smith.
they
Oh my god.
wouldn't do it because I wasn't the owner
Red
of
Bull
his
gives you
account.
wings.
So law enforcement, just so the viewers and listeners know, they can subpoena that information.
Yeah.
But you can't get that information.
Yeah, and not only that, because I was on so many sites with the generated number, there's no way for me to tell you with absolute certainty which one he contacted me through.
So you think it was 10 or 11 years ago, so that
It was summer of 2015.
summer of 2015.
Yes.
So when he reaches out to you, he calls you on the number. It's a Google generated number, you said.
He
And
didn't
then
call, we texted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so you guys texted over the Google generated number. Do you remember what he said, or was it just like, "Hey, I'd like to meet up with you"?
Initially, it was, "Hey, I'd like to meet up with you." Then it was, he wanted me to go directly to his house in Massapequa. And when I tell you I'm like the most locationally challenged person on earth, I can live somewhere for 5 years
Well,
and I still need to GPS getting home.
all the downers.
So I was very unfamiliar with Massapequa, and I
God.
said to him, you know, I don't want to go directly to your house. I don't know the area. I don't have friends there. I'd feel a lot more comfortable if we met in a public local place near me.
Yeah.
And if I'm comfortable, sure, I'll come back to your place.
But he wanted you to come to his home.
He wanted me to come directly to his home. He didn't want to meet at a public restaurant.
Knowing what you know now, because the police are saying the dates he would go on with the women that he's accused of murdering happened when his wife was out of town. So does that freak you out? Kind of thinking about that in hindsight.
No, what freaks me out in hindsight is thinking that this man sat across from me bragging because he knew I was in such a vulnerable position in my life that I wouldn't go to the cops because, one, I probably wouldn't be believed, or two, I'd probably be arrested. But I think that's what freaks
Very
me out the
nasally.
most, is that he may have put hypotheticals or said, you know, he or what he thought.
She's very
But
nasally.
it was somebody who had done it and been there describing those crimes. And I think that's what scared me the most.
So tell me about the date. Tell me exactly where you met in public and what happened from there, if you don't mind.
So we didn't meet at his car. I know a lot of people were like,
Hello,
did you see what kind of car he was driving? No. So he met me directly in front of the restaurant, the steam room in Port Jeff. We walked in, we grabbed a seat, we ordered drinks. He was surprised that I don't drink alcohol. I don't know why that's such a surprising thing to people.
Because of the way you talk.
And he ordered his drink. We ordered some food. I don't remember what he got, but I know I got salmon and rice because I was allergic to shellfish. And we started talking.
What
And
downer was she
everything
on?
seemed normal, very basic, like, you know, generic chatter that you would use, you know, when you're first meeting a person, first date. And then switched to, he asked if I was interested in true crime. And at that point, it still wasn't weird for me. I actually got excited because I am a true crime fanatic. Like, I could quote very weird, random things from serial killers or know facts that very few people know. Like, very, very heavily involved in, you know, the true
Very
crime
nasally.
scene. But even though I'm a fan and I'm involved, I have empathy for the victims.
Should I turn on
the way he
captions?
described things wasn't like the point of view of somebody who, you know, had empathy
Captions
for
on.
the victims. So basically, like when he talked about the other killers and their victims and different things like that, he talked about it like a true crime buff. He
like a
talked about it the way I would or you would or any other person would. It was when we got to him saying, "Have you heard of the Gilgo Beach murders?" And I said, "Yes, I've heard of the Gilgo Beach murders." And like, I'm from Long Island, we all have. And that's when he started talking about it. He sat up straighter. He had like this smirk on his face. It was almost like he was like excited to talk about it. Like, I get to talk about it now. This is great.
What did he say about the Gilgo Beach murders?
So he asked me if I thought Shannon Gilbert, that Jersey City girl, was connected. I said yeah. And he said, yeah, I do too.
Is that her? No, that's not
And
her.
then another thing he said was, how do you think they get rid of the bodies without going noticed? And I said, I don't know. I've never been to the area ever. I don't know the access points. I don't know anything about it.
Speed it up a half click.
And he said, well, it's very dark and desolate. And then he goes, what if they treaded through the marsh? And I don't know if he meant in one of those big rubber suits walking through it with camouflage bags,
She's
or if he meant he took a
normal.
small boat with no light, or what he meant by that. But that was one hypothetical. And the other he gave was, well, a cop could easily do it without anyone bothering him. Turn his lights on, park, put a cone up. No one's going to bother him.
So what happens after that part of the discussion?
Listen, I'm not knocking on the subject matter. We can poke a little fun at this, this individual at our own expense. The subject matter, of course, is very, very serious. We're all allowed to laugh a little once in a while. But yeah, this is the 1.25 is doing it for me. We're gonna keep
And
it
did you
at
think
1.25.
this is just a little too creepy? It's a little too descriptive. I'm out of here, or what happened?
So I tried to be polite. I actually stayed through the whole thing. And I remember him saying, it's up to 10 victims now, right? And I said, I think so. I wish I could describe it. Like, I wish there was a word for it. But he seemed like somebody who was reliving it and enjoying it, and like almost like mentally orgasming.
Probably
Like
is.
later on, he
She's
was
getting
going to
paid.
get to reveal the truth to me that all along it was him. Like, he was building up to it at the dinner, and almost like it was a game for him. It was funny. Like, the way he talked about the victims was like, well, they were just escorts, they were just prostitutes, they were just whores. And then he'd be like, but don't worry, I don't think of you that way. I know you have aspirations and
Oh my
hopes and
God.
dreams.
I can't.
And, I feel like he did that to all the victims, but like, how dare you, my biggest reason for coming on is people are like, oh, she wants 15 minutes of fame or this or that. And it's not that. It's these women are being dehumanized for a job that they did. And I want people to realize that you can end up in a really vulnerable situation where you have no other options but that. And that doesn't change that they had hopes and dreams and aspirations. Like I got the chance to become a mother. I got the chance to become a really talented hairstylist and makeup artist. I was given that chance because I survived. These women had that taken away from them because he thought that he had the right to do that. And that's my biggest thing is I want people to put a face to these women that isn't just an escort. I want them to see that these women, if they had gotten a chance, probably would have gotten out and lived their dreams too.
I'm going to tell
that's
you
very
though.
important. I think.
Hey, listen, I don't want to knock on anybody. I want to knock on anybody's lifestyle. She's actually a pretty intelligent woman. I'm gonna tell you, she's well spoken when she's sped up a little bit. But she's cognizant of what's going on. She's got some really great insight, and I'm actually pretty fascinated by the interview. She's doing a good
That
job.
they are dehumanized. I agree with you by some people, and ultimately
Yeah,
by the person who
absolutely,
took their
Nanya. I
lives.
mean,
Did
we're
he say
we're
to
laughing a little bit here at the expense, but hey, she's very into this. She knows what's going on. So
you in your discussions
never
how
judge
he
a book by
believed the
its cover.
women were killed?
I know he said strangulation and hammer. I know he said I feel like a hammer would be real quick and easy. Said usually it'll take one time. As if like hitting them once with the hammer in the head would usually do the trick. And
Did he
at his
s-
size and his weight, I could imagine that kind of force would be at one time would be enough. I said, and I think also other sick things go on, like cutting fingers off or toes, just a lot, torture in small ways. I feel like he's an animal who's been slowly building up. And, you know, you don't just kill for 10 years and suddenly get caught. This man's been traveling for a very long time. He's smart, he's calculating, he's cunning, he knows what he's doing. There are a lot more women connected to Rex Heuermann than just who he's charged
I
with.
think
And
so
I think
too.
in the future, we're going to see that.
What happened after all of this discussion? And you said you're polite. You stayed through the dinner.
So he asked if I was going to come home with him. And at that point, I had a bad feeling in my stomach. I was scared. I was thinking I might have to order that weird drink from the bartender to get me out of here. And I ended up saying to him, you know, it's late.
So it seems like he was taking these women back to his house and, and going back and saying, like, do you think that his wife knew anything about this? So we still have up there 35% say yes, 65% say no, unless he was immaculately timing this when she was away from the home, you know?
I don't know Massapequa. I don't want to drive there and then have to drive home that late and that tired. Maybe another time. And he was like, no, no, no. Like, leave your car here. You would take my car. Why would we take two cars? That's stupid. Like, let's just save gas. Like, very insistive. Then I took my car and left it in the parking lot and went into his car. And in hindsight, I think it's because he didn't want to be on traffic cameras having to get rid of a girl's car.
So how did things end? I mean, did he pay you at all, or did you just say, you know, I think I'm going to go home? How did things wrap up?
I didn't get paid. I said, you know, thank you it was nice meeting you, but I don't think this is going to work out. And I had texted a friend and had them meet me in the parking lot because I was scared. And I told Rex, you know, oh, I have somebody meeting me here just to make sure I get home okay. Because I feel like if he didn't know that information, he might have been planning to go after me in the parking lot for all I know. He was terrifying. So I got up. He gave me that firm handshake again. And we walked out, and my friend waved to me. And you could tell he was very visually agitated. He was annoyed he did all that work and I wasn't going with him. Like you could definitely see the agitation within him, but I was just glad to get out of there.
When he introduced himself to you, how did he introduce himself?
Online we had fake names. I couldn't even tell you what at this point. But when we met, I said, "Hi, my real name's Nikki. It's nice to meet you." Something along those lines, and he said Rex, and that was it. But I knew he was an architect from Manhattan before I even went on the date with him.
So you left. Never heard from him again, I assume, or did you ever hear from him
I
again?
deleted accounts. I blocked numbers. I made it where it was impossible for him to find me again because I did not want that encounter. Everything in my body told me that I needed to get away from that man.
But he originally wanted you to come to his home.
Yeah. And when I tell you, I've met men, you know, I never felt that for any other man ever. I never felt that kind of fear except for with him. And that's why I remember it so vividly, is because I was so scared. I feel like you don't forget that kind of fear.
When did you stop? When did you stop this line of work? Was it shortly after that? Did you think I have to really do something else, or are you? Do you
So,
remember?
the system kind of had me screwed for a little while there. I had a few years after where I couldn't get out of. I dance, I worked at strip clubs, things like that in nature, but I didn't do sex work as an escort anymore. I kind of got scared out of it, but I was working strip clubs and still in the sex work industry. It took either 8 to 10 years of my felony being that old for me to be able to finally get accepted back into a school and start making a career and a life for myself.
So, Nikki, have you contacted the Suffolk County Police Department? Have they interviewed you at all about this interaction you had with Rex?
So they didn't, reach out to me at all for a while. It took up until last week to finally reach out to me. And I set up an appointment to go there, but I have a newborn and other kids, and I was so exhausted. I ended up passing out. And, while my daughter napped, I ended up napping too, and I missed it. And I called, and we're going to reschedule it for probably late this week or next week to go in and have an interview. But I ruined that. I slept right through it. I was exhausted.
Was there, or do you have any final thoughts about this? I can't imagine realizing I went to dinner with somebody who is accused of something so awful. I mean, that had to just be really chilling.
It's not a new realization. This is something I've been telling people for years. So for me, this isn't a new discovery. This is something I've known. It's just not. It's a validation of knowing my instincts were right. That feels good, but otherwise, I think that I could have been another victim had I made a different choice.
Well, I think that we're all glad that you had such good instincts and you trusted your gut. They always say trust your gut, and you did. Nikki, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it, and we hope you'll come back another time.
I would love to.
I reached out to Suffolk County Police and asked whether detectives plan to interview Nikki Brass about her experience. A spokesperson told me the department does not comment on who detectives have or have not interviewed. However, the spokesperson said if Nikki Brass had an encounter with the suspect and wants to tell her story, she can contact the task force to schedule an interview. That's it for this edition of Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. You can listen to and download Sidebar on Apple, Spotify, Google, and wherever else.
All right. That's it. A little Long Island serial killer tonight. I think that's going to end the show. We're going to keep this one short and sweet tonight, about an hour. I'm sure there's multiple other live streams going on right now. What I'll do for you all, I believe Tanya is streaming right now. So I'm going to probably set it up to redirect over there. And I'll be back on Friday night. We'll whip up a Idaho stream, see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. So let's see. Let's do this. Send her over there. All right. If you want to be redirected when this ends, just hang out and just click on that redirect button. You can go over and check out Tanya. All right, y'all. Have a good night. I'm going to get out of here. Episode 55 in the bank. Talk to y'all soon. Have a good night.